a Thai-time world champion in mixed martial arts, walks onto the competition mat at her training center in Portland, Oregon, looks at the man drilling in the far corner with three of her intermediate students, and tells him, without raising her voice, in the tone of someone who has said similar things many times and found them effective, that this floor is for serious practitioners, and that if he would like to observe, there are chairs against the north wall, not because he had asked to be there, not because he had caused any disruption, not because anyone had complained, because she had arrived and found him there, and made her assessment in the time it takes to cross a room. 4 seconds later, one of her students said a single sentence. She did not speak again for a long time. What happened in the 2 hours after that rearranged something she had been carrying for 16 years. There is a training center on Northwest 23rd Avenue in Portland, Oregon, called Harkin Combat Arts, a renovated ground floor space in a building that had been, in sequence, a textile warehouse, a printing office, and a CrossFit affiliate, before its current owner stripped it back to the concrete and the exposed ceiling joists, and made it into the thing she wanted it to be. 3,200 square feet, competition-grade wrestling mats covering the main floor, wall to wall, edge to edge. A cage in the northeast corner, not full size. A 12-foot training cage, the kind used for drilling rather than competition. A weights area separated from the mat by a low barrier that the students always stepped over rather than walking around, because the shortcut was faster and because the owner had never told them not to. Harkin Combat Arts ran 14 classes a week. Its members were divided by 3 levels: foundation, intermediate, and advanced, and the divisions were not ceremonial. The owner tested placements herself twice a year and moved people up or down without sentiment. She had moved 3 people down in the last cycle, which was not something most facility owners did. She had done it because the alternative was letting a fiction stand, and she did not maintain fictions about competence. The membership cost $240 a month. There was no trial period. You paid for the first month before you stepped on the mat. The facility had been open for 4 years. In those 4 years, it had produced 1 national champion at the amateur level, 2 regional title holders, and a striking coach whose alumni competed in 6 states. It was not the largest or best-known facility in Portland. It was known specifically among people who trained seriously as a place where the work was the point and the work was real. The owner's name was Sela Fatu. She had driven in from her apartment in the Pearl District that Tuesday morning at 7:43, parked in the lot behind the building, and come through the back door carrying a coffee and a canvas bag with the day's session plans in it. She had 3 advanced students coming at 9, a private at 10:30, and the intermediate group at noon. She had been on the phone with a promoter in Seattle for the 20 minutes it had taken her to drive in. A conversación about a regional event in November that had not resolved to her satisfaction, and that she was still turning over when she pushed through the mat room door. She had stopped. There were 3 of her intermediate students on the mat: Yuna, a 26-year-old who had been training for 2 years; Marcus, 31, a former collegiate wrestler relearning striking; and Dani, 44, the kind of technically precise student who absorbed correction faster than almost anyone Sela had taught. They were drilling a single-leg takedown sequence. Standard intermediate work. Clean, nothing wrong with the execution. With them, in the far corner of the mat, was a 4th person she did not recognize. It was a tall man in a plain dark rash, garden training shorts. It was following the sequence, watching Yuna, then replicating the movement, then watching the correction Danny offered him, then trying again. His movement had the quality of someone who had drilled enough to know what they were chasing, even when they could not yet fully reach it. Sela looked at him for 4 seconds. She walked across the mat. Sela Fatu had grown up in Gresham, 20 miles east of Portland, in a Samoan community that was tied in the way of communities that have held themselves together through displacement and distance. Her father had been a longshoreman. Her mother had worked the morning shift at a bakery on Division Street for 22 years, starting at 4 in the morning, home by 2 in the afternoon to be there when school ended. Both of them had worked in the way of people for whom work was not a choice, but a permanent present tense. Sela had started training at 17 at a small mixed martial arts gym in Gresham, run by a man named Roy Akana, who had competed in the regional circuit in the early 2000s and who had the particular quality of the best coaches, the ability to see what a student was trying to do and help them do it better without making the correction feel like a diminishment. She had found out she was good at this. In the same session, she found out she loved it, which was fortunate timing. She had competed for the first time at 18, won and kept winning. Regional titles at 19 and 20. A national amateur championship at 21. She had turned professional at 22 in a sport that did not have the infrastructure for women that it has now. Fewer organizations, fewer events, fewer people willing to take the booking risk on women's cards. She had fought on the undercard of men's events, in venues where the announcer had mispronounced her last name twice and not corrected it. In weigh-ins, where the media tables had been empty because the press credentials had run out by the time the women's bouts were processed. She had won anyway. She had won the first world title at 26 in an organization called Pinnacle Fighting Championship, at a venue in Sacramento on a Thursday night in November. In a fight that was not for the main card, but that anyone who watched it remembered for years. She had defended it twice and won a second title at a different weight at 29. She had retired at 32 with a professional record of 19 and 2, a record that bore no meaningful relationship to the attention it had received while she was accumulating it. During her career, she had grown a particular sensitivity, not anger, sensitivity, to the way certain people moved through combat sports spaces. The people who arrived with cameras and questions and a consumer's interest in proximity to something they found impressive without having done the work of it. She had been photographed with those people at events. She had answered their questions with the professional patience of someone who understood the transaction. She had watched them leave. She had watched others, too. Men, sometimes, who arrived at training facilities with no background and the vague performance of toughness and took up space on the mat while serious people worked around them. She had watched coaches accommodate this out of courtesy or commercial interest. She had found it over years increasingly difficult to watch. When she opened Harkin, she had structured the intake specifically to prevent it. The $240 a month upfront, the placement testing, the no-trial policy. She had built the door as a filter. She was aware that the filter sometimes caught the wrong things. She had considered this and decided that the alternative was worse. On a Tuesday morning in October, with a Seattle call still unresolved in her mind, she walked across the mat and looked at the man in the far corner, and the filter activated before she had asked a single question. She sighed. This floor is for registered members at intermediate level and above. If you'd like to observe, there are chairs against the north wall. She sighed it calmly, the way someone says something they have said before. There was a pause. One of her students said something. It was Dani who spoke. Dani Marchetti had been training at Harkin for 2.5 years. She was a 44-year-old high school history teacher who had started training after a conversation with her doctor about bone density, and had discovered, within 3 sessions, that she loved it in a way she had not loved anything physical since she had run track in college 22 years earlier. She was technically the most precise student in the intermediate group. She was also, in the quiet way of a person who has spent 20 years managing a classroom, attentive to the dynamics of rooms. She had been watching Sela cross the mat. She sighed. Sela has been here before. He trained with the advanced group last spring. Sela stopped. She looked at Dani. Roya Kana sent him, Dani said. She said it carefully, in the way of someone offering information rather than correction. He mentioned it last session. I thought you knew. Roya Kana. Sela looked at the man. He had not moved from the corner of the mat. He was not performing patience or performing indifference. It was just standing, one hand resting on his knee, waiting for whatever happened next with the particular stillness of a person who has waited in more difficult rooms than this. Sela sighed. Roy sent you? He said. Yes. I hope that's all right. I should have confirmed before coming in this morning. That's on me. I sighed it, without edge, without the performance of being wronged. Sela stood on the mat. She became aware that all 3 of her students were watching her. She sighed. Stay, we're running single-leg progressions until 10. She walked to the equipment cage. She set her bag down. She stood with her back to the room for a moment. Then she went back to the mat and began the session. The session ran 90 minutes. Sela coached it the way she coached everything, with precision, with specificity, with a complete absence of false encouragement. She corrected Yuna's level change twice, Marcus's grip once, Danny's weight distribution on the finish. She watched the man work the sequence with Danny as a partner and did not correct him because there was nothing to correct. His movement was not showy. It was exact. At the end of the session, as the students were rotating through their cooldown, Sela asked him to stay. Danny noticed she took a little longer with her cooldown than she needed to. Then she collected her things and left. They sat on the mat, not across the room from each other, not at a desk, but cross-legged on the competition mat in the middle of the floor the way people sit when they are between rounds and there are no chairs close enough to bother with. Sela said, "Roy didn't call me." "I meant to," the man said. "I think he assumed the connection was enough." "The connection is enough," she said. "I should have asked before I crossed the floor." I sighed. "I should have checked in at the door." She looked at the mat. "I do that," she said. "What I did this morning. It's not always that visible, but I do it." He did not say anything. "I built this place to keep a certain kind of person out," she said. "The kind that treats the mat like an experience to collect. I've spent 15 years watching those people move through this sport, and I have a strong reaction to anything that looks like it." She paused. "I don't always look carefully enough at what it actually is before I react." He said, "Can I ask you something?" She looked at him. "The two losses on your record, the Pinnacle title defense in Nashville and the rematch in Denver. I've watched both fights several times." She was still. "In Nashville, you were winning every exchange standing until the third round. Then you changed something, your weight distribution on the outside. It looked like an adjustment, but it also looked like something happened to make you feel like you needed to adjust when you didn't. What was it?" Sela looked at him for a moment. She sighed. "Nobody has ever asked me that. I've wondered about it for 2 years." She was quiet for a moment. "There was a comment," she said, "before the fight, from someone in the corner, about my footwork on the outside being a liability. It wasn't a bad observation. There was something to it. But it was the wrong moment, and I took it with me into round 3. She stopped. "I adjusted something that didn't need adjusting because someone told me it was a problem and I didn't have enough distance from the comment to evaluate it. I gave away my best position because I was busy managing a thought that had no business being in the cage with me." She cited the way a person says something they have analyzed thoroughly and not yet fully made peace with. "The rematch," he said. "The rematch I lost properly," she said. "She was better that night. I was fine with that." He nodded. She looked at him. "Why did you watch those fights?" "Because the way you move in the first 2 rounds of Nashville is some of the best footwork I have ever seen at that weight," he said. "I've been trying to understand the geometry of it for 2 years. I still don't fully have it." Sela sat with that for a moment. "The geometry," she said. "The angles you create off the outside step. Most fighters at your level do one thing with the outside step. You do 3 different things with the same entry depending on what the opponent gives you in the first half second. That's not drilling. That's reading." She said, "You understand what you're looking at." "I've been trying to for a long time," he said. She looked at the mat, the cage in the corner, the weights behind the barrier. "This morning I looked at you," she said, "and I saw the thing I have the least patience for, someone who wants proximity to the work without doing the work." "I know," he said. "I was wrong." "Yes. I'm telling you because I want to be accurate about it, not because I'm looking for something from you," he said. "I know that too." They sat on the mat for a moment in the particular quiet of 2 people who have finished something and do not need to fill the space where it was. Then she said, "Roy told me once that the best practitioners he ever trained were the ones who were still curious. Not confident. Curious. The ones who kept showing up to be surprised by what they didn't know." "That sounds like Roy," he said. "He said you were one of those." She looked at him. He was right. She stood up, offered her hand. He shook it. "Come to the advanced session Thursday," she said. 6 a.m. We're working outside leg entries. You can tell me if I'm reading the geometry right. Inside, I'll be here. It came on Thursday. It came the Thursday after that. It trained at Harkin 9 times over the following 6 weeks, always in the early sessions, always without announcement, always in the same dark rash, guard, and training shorts. And Sela did not have another conversation like the one on the mat. They did not need to. What they had was the thing that needs no maintenance, a shared standard and the willingness to work inside it. On the last session before he left Portland, he stayed after to help Sela reset the cage padding, which needed to be pulled and resecured along the bottom rail. A 20-minute job that was easier with two people. They worked without talking much. She handed him the fastener tool when he needed it. He passed her the padding when she needed it. When they finished, she said, "The outside step. The third variation. You found it?" He considered. "I think so," he said. "I'll know when I try it with resistance." "That's the right answer," she said. Sela did not change her intake policy immediately. She sat with the Tuesday morning for 2 weeks before she changed anything, because she was not someone who moved from a single incident to a structural conclusion without thinking it through. She had built the intake the way she had because she had specific reasons, and she needed to work out which of those reasons still held, and which of them had been doing something other than what she thought. What she concluded after 2 weeks was this: the $240 up front and the placement testing were right. They maintained the standard. The no-trial policy was not right. It had been designed to keep out people she didn't want. But it was also, she admitted to herself, keeping out people she hadn't yet looked at carefully enough to know if she wanted. She kept the upfront payment and the testing. She added a single trial class. Free, observation only. No mat time, just the chance to see what the work actually looked like before committing to it. Nota concesión, an invitation to be honest about whether the room was the right room. She told Danny about the change, because Danny had been the one who spoke on the mat, and she had earned the explanation. Danny listened. Then she said, "Can I tell you something I've been thinking about?" Sela said yes. Danny said there was a woman who had called about membership 3 months earlier, a 40-year-old from Northeast Portland named Claudette Hayes, who had done judo in her 20s and wanted to come back to mat work after a long gap. She had been told there was no trial period. She had not called back. "I kept her number," Danny said. Sela looked at her. "Call her," Sela said. Claudette Hayes came in on a Wednesday evening in December. She was 41, not 40, because 3 months had passed. She was slightly nervous in the way of someone who has tucked herself back to a door that was closed before and is not certain it will be open now. She had done judo for 4 years in her 20s. She was, within 20 minutes, clearly the most technically grounded person in the foundation group. Sela watched her from the cage. She thought about the 2 weeks she had spent working out which reasons still held. She thought Claudette Hayes could have been here 3 months earlier. She thought about what it had cost her not to be. Danny Marchetti had been thinking about opening her own facility for a year before the Tuesday morning on the mat. Not a full facility. A small space, 2 or 3 evenings a week, foundation-level instruction for adult beginners, specifically people who had never been in a combat sports environment and did not know if they were welcome in one. The kind of people who called and were told there was no trial period and did not. Kai back. She had not moved on it because she was not sure she had the standing. She had 2.5 years of training. She was a history teacher, not a fighter. She was not Sela Fato. She talked to Sela about it in January. She had expected Sela to tell her she needed more time, more credential, a clear qualification. Sela sighed. "You've been teaching adults to learn things for 20 years. That's what this is." She paused. "What would you call it?" Danny had not thought about the name. She thought about it. "First mat," she said. Sela nodded. "Good," she said. First mat opened on a Thursday evening in March, in a rented space on Northeast Alberta Street, with 8 square mats and 12 registered students, and a handwritten sign on the door that Danny had made herself. It ran 2 evenings a week. Within 4 months, it had a waiting list. Danny taught every session herself. She corrected weight distribution and grips and level changes with the same precision she had learned at Harkin. She told her students things Roy Akana had told Sela, that Sela had told her, that she now passed on without always knowing where they had started. She told them the mat did not care who you were before you stepped on it. She told them the only question it asked was whether you were willing to be bad at something long enough to get better. She told them curiosity was more durable than confidence. At the end of the first year, she had 43 students. 3 of them had moved up to Harkin's foundation program. Sela sent her a card when the first 3 made the transfer. The card said, "This is what it's for." Danny kept it on her desk. Roy Akana drove up from Gresham to visit Harkin on a Saturday morning in the spring, which he did twice a year. Because Sela was the student he was most proud of, and he was not too old or too private to say so. A walk through the mat room, watched 20 minutes of the advanced session, had coffee with Sela in her office after. She told him about the Tuesday morning. The whole of it, plainly, without softening the part about what she had said to the man in the corner, or why. Roy listened. He said, "Did you fix it?" She sighed. "Yes." Hay said, "Good." Then he said, "You know what the hardest thing is for someone who's had to fight for every room they ever earned?" She looked at him, noticing when you've become the one controlling the door. She was quiet. "I know," she said. "That's the thing." He finished his coffee. "How's his outside step?" "I found a third variation," she said. Roy nodded. "He always does," he said. "Eventually. What I keep coming back to is not the 4 seconds. The 4 seconds is the thing the title promises. The moment the assessment is made, and everything that follows is set in motion. And it is real. 4 seconds. A man drilling in the corner of a mat. A woman crossing the room. A sentence delivered in the tone of someone who has said similar things before. 4 seconds. But the part I think about is what Sela said on the mat afterward. I'm telling you because I want to be accurate about it, not because I'm looking for something from you. That sentence stays with me. Because I think most apologies, most honest ones, not the performed ones, are a little bit about what the person apologizing is looking for. A release of the thing they're carrying. Permission to feel better about themselves. The warmth of being told, it's all right. Ansela did not want any of that. She just wanted the account to be correct. I do not know how many people can do that. Say a true thing about their own behavior to the person they behaved badly toward, and ask for nothing in return. Not because they're strong, but because the accuracy matters more to them than the relief. I think about whether I could do it. I am not entirely sure. This story is fictional, inspired by Keanu Reeves' well-known reputation for genuine dedication to his craft and for treating every room he trains in as though the work is the only credential that counts. Drop a comment and tell me what this one brought up for you. Share it with someone who might need it today. Subscribe if you want to be here for the next one. See you in the next one.